So outside of your entrepreneurial activity, what did you do to fill your time for the rest of your sentence in Canada?
Well, I was really lucky because they had something called the prison education system, and it was out of the university in British Columbia, the Simon Fraser and the University of Victoria, and they had a group of um, how would you call them, lefties. Actually, one of them was English, Socialist Workers' Party, used to work for the BBC, and this group they wanted to. They had an idea that teaching humanities to prisoners might awaken an awareness of the values of Western culture and that people would make the conscious choice not to be criminals. And so this ethos, they brought in humanities courses, literature and art and history and psychology and philosophy. And the idea was to, one, get prisoners to get university degrees. So they
Did
would,
you already have a degree?
no, I didn't. I didn't
Okay.
finish my degree because I went to prison.
What subject was it you were doing?
I was doing Japanese studies.
Okay.
But of course, the university wasn't doing Japanese studies. So I took, and anyway, I died and gone to heaven basically with this because, the usual books in prison are dusters and just cheap, murder fiction and sci fi and stuff. But these guys were actually intelligent, committed people who were bringing in real books, and I would have a tutorial with a full professor from the university, one on one for an hour. I mean, just things that you'd never conceive of. Like if you were a paying student now, imagine you'd be lucky now if you saw your professor for 15 minutes and you didn't just. So with this prison education program, I got right into it, and I got my degree, and then I started teaching for them in the prison to the other prisoners, different things, mostly remedial stuff. And I got paid. And we started publishing a prison journal, and we got involved with bringing outside groups in, like students from the university doing criminology would come in, and we'd organize sort of get-togethers between prisoners and students so they could ask their questions directly with no mediation between, books or teachers and such like. So it was really good. I mean, I've got to give those guys credit. Of course, the program's disappeared. It was defunded when they went back to the old punishment regime. But the prison education program from the University of Victoria was excellent.
So how did it feel to go from this high adrenaline lifestyle then to be teaching people, prisoners? A third of the prisoners where our house couldn't even read or write, and I was assigned at one point to help them do some stuff for the high school, the GED, I think it's called. So to go from this wild lifestyle and helping other people, how did that feel?
Well, it wasn't a hard transition because my mother was a university professor and I grew up around universities. So I sort of knew how to carry myself. And I'd been a student before I was busted. And so, in a sense, I'd got that stuff out of my system. I think, what do they call it when a boy wants to turn into a man? A rite of passage?
Yeah,
Well, that was my rite of passage, going to San Quentin, basically.
baptism of fire.
Yeah, I knew who I was after that, and I was secure in myself. And that means something. And of course, that's 11 years spent inside. But you can't look at what is time wasted. I mean, is time wasted working at the Lloyd's Bank for 11 years? Punching the computer screen? Is that? I mean, what else did I learn? I learned how to play badminton in prison.
What about chess?
My tennis game improved. Canada, I must say, has got some good sports facilities.
And did you play any chess?
The guys' checkers is their game.
Checkers, okay.
Prisoners in America, chess is a bit too cerebral for them. We're talking checkers. Did you play chess with anybody?
Yeah, there was heavyweight chess players in Arizona,
Oh.
definitely. They schooled me. I thought I knew a thing or two because I was in a chess club when I was a kid. I went in there, got my ass whooped right away. I had to have my parents sending in chess books so I could learn all these opening moves and all that kind of
Wow.
stuff.
These guys they like gambling, poker. But of
Yeah.
course, I wouldn't sit down with anybody because in in Canada, for example, that bent stockbroker I was telling you about, he came in, he brought $5,000 up his ass, and he I guess he wanted to buy friends or something, try and protect him against. So he sat down at the poker table, and there were six guys playing, and of course he lost his $5,000 like in about 3 days.
Yeah.
And what he didn't know was that every single person was playing it. They're all playing together.
You got hustled.
He got hustled.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't play games with people because, like, if you start playing chess with somebody, the next thing they want to start betting cigarettes, and the guy's going to try and hustle you.
Yeah, I never staked anything on my games. It was just sportsman's pleasure.
Well, that's all right if you can maintain it like that.
Yeah. So, what year did you get released in Canada?
Well, I was deported to England, 1987.
Why were you deported to England?
I was born here,
Whereabouts in England were you born?
Carlisle.
Okay, and how did you end up in America?
My mother was a professor there.
So your parents, were they both from Scotland?
No, no, my father's from Lincolnshire.
Lincolnshire,
Yeah,
and your mother
she was Canadian.
Canadian, and then they were teaching and working out of California. I
Yeah,
see.
they both got PhDs at the University of California.
I see. Okay. So when you ended up deported to the UK, did you have anybody here?
Well, I got some cousins. But of course, you know, you get your family reputation is basically
Black sheep.
yeah.
So what was your support structure? What year was it again? Sorry, that you came back.
1987.
So 1987, we've got England is it's like the crash of 87, is it the big rise of the yuppies and all that kind of stuff. Thatcher, is it? And you're coming back to the UK, black sheep, family members probably don't want to support you. So what do you do?
The Dole.
The dole.
Yeah,
And did the dole give you housing benefit, a place to live and all
yeah,
that? A flat?
yeah.
What part of the UK were you in?
South Coast.
South
Yeah.
Coast. And
So
did
I basically got the Dole, but I mean, in those days you could live on the Dole, and it was okay, but there's no future to it. So I thought to myself, I've got to take my education a bit further if I'm going to do anything. Because I mean, I have to say, I realized that I'd gone as close to the edge of the abyss as you could. Now, the guys, remember I told you there were guys in my tip? Well, dead, dead, life without possibility of parole, life, but another life on top of that. So that was the option.
so you know thinking, look at what's happened to those guys. I'm going to make a go of the straight and narrow and try and rebuild my life and not go back to crime.
Exactly. I completely turned back on crime because there was no, I mean, in California, it's three strikes and you're out. Well, I had my three strikes, and the next time I'd just be written off as a habitual criminal. So
How old were you in 1987?
1987, I would have been 33.
You strike me as, you got these entrepreneurial skills, obviously. Is that what you then did? Did you kind of like do your own business?
Well, I eventually ended up in business, but yeah, I'll take my hand at whatever's coming up if there's an opportunity. I mean, if my theory is if you can do business in San Quentin, you can do business anywhere, right?
That should be inspirational to prisoners worldwide. Jesus. So my therapist said to me, Shaun, look, the skills you've cultivated in here to deal with these thugs is going to last you for the rest of your life. So is that what you're saying here?
Well, for example, I have a property. It's an old industrial property, and when I bought it, I had this tenant, and he's a junkyard dog. He was one of these fellas, big guy, bald head. He's involved in the dark side and all kinds of stuff, but he loved to intimidate people. So he would shout in your face and bang the table and make threats. And he threatened the fella I bought the place from so badly that the old guy sold it cheap just to get out of there. And I inherited this guy. But it was like watching him go through his routine, I'd seen it 100 times before. I was just watching. It was like, it was like watching a drama on TV. Each time he'd like take, because he was smart. He wouldn't, he'd come right to the edge. Like one time, he didn't pay the rent for a while. So I went to his house late one night and banged on the door. He wasn't there, but his 16-year-old daughter was. And she said, "What do you want?" I said, "I want my rent money." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Your daddy's not paying the rent." He told me he did. I said, "Well, you go tell him." Anyway, so next time I come to the place, he just starts ranting and raving. "You went to my house. You talked to my daughter. You told her I hadn't paid the rent," screaming and shouting and banging the table. And he throws a chair against the wall. And I'm just watching this guy. Of course, I'm sitting myself. So if he like makes a move in my direction, I can deal with him. But you've gone through all that. You've seen that routine worked out. That's a prison routine. The guy screams and shouts, gets in your face, and you're meant to back down. You're meant to be intimidated.
Probing your reaction.
So like and he, that was, in fact, that guy still has the property next door. So.
So how successful have you become?
Well, successful enough. I mean, what is successful these days? I don't know. I mean, the money's inflated so badly. You call it the British peso now.
I think when you go through these things, you learn that success is mental, really, and you strike me as level-headed.
Well, if you feel comfortable with yourself, you've been successful.
Yeah, if you're happy in your own skin.
Yeah,
That's
the one,
isn't it?
That's the one.
Yeah, yeah.
Because money doesn't really matter that much. I mean, what difference does it make what kind of car you drive? Basically, they're all the same tech these days, whether you paid £50,000 for your car or 1,500. And clothes or what else? I mean, you want to wear jewelry. I mean, life is the simpler things are the ones that are the most pleasurable.
Yeah.
So
enjoying the small things.
And that's one thing prison teaches you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one lesson that you learn, is that you can live in a small space. You can eat shitty food. You can put up with stuff. And so when you run into what comes in later, you hear these people whinging all the time, and you think, come on, I mean, you guys, you've never seen it. You've never lived it.
Yeah.